Hello and welcome to Building High Performance Cultures, a weekly series where we talk to executives from top organizations. I'm Marty Parker, the President and CEO of Waterstone Human Capital, and my guest today is the Founder, President, and CEO of D2L, John Baker. John, welcome to Building High Performance Cultures.
Hi, Marty. Great to be joining you. Great topic.
And I know it's one you're passionate about, so we'll get right into it. But first, a little bit more about John. Talk about a bait and switch, right into it, and then an introduction. So John not only founded D2L, which is a global software company that believes that learning is the foundation upon which all progress and achievement rests. And he did this in 1999, all the while he was attending the University of Waterloo. So if you weren't busy enough, for those of you students, I hope my kids are listening, founding a business is a possibility. Now, John's truly a strong believer in community involvement. He devotes much of his personal and business efforts to supporting young entrepreneurs who are developing and applying technology to improve society worldwide. He was appointed to the governing council of the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. He's also a member of the Entrepreneur Circle of the Business Council of Canada, Business Higher Education Roundtable and the past chair of the board of Communitech, which has launched so many successful businesses. And he's also a board member of Canada's National Ballet School, which I know I had a relative who danced for the Canadian National Ballet School, one of the best in the world. So that's something to be said.
Indeed.
So John was awarded the Meritorious Service Cross, the EY Entrepreneur of the Year for Ontario's for software and technology, the Young Alumni Achievement Medal from the University of Waterloo, and the Intrepid Entrepreneur of the Year in Waterloo Region in the Hall of Fame. And of course, D2L is a two-time Canada's Most Admired Cultures Award winner, first in 2017 and most recently in 2020. So with all of that said, John, for people who may not be familiar with D2L, tell us a little bit about the company beyond what I've just briefly mentioned and about the culture you've built there.
Oh, that's great, Marty. And thanks for reading the short bio.
You're welcome. That's really short in my business.
So D2L as a company, when I was in my third year, as you referenced in university, I was wrestling with what's the most important problem that I could solve that would have the biggest impact on the world. And I couldn't think of anything bigger than transforming the way the world learns, because learning has this ripple effect. You know, as you can imagine, in our companies or in schools or universities or colleges, if we can improve that learning experience, it really has a big impact on the individual providing that learning opportunity to, and it ripples from one team member to the next, through our family, from one generation to the next. Learning has something that's not just transactional in nature, it really has this long-lasting ripple effect. And so I rolled up the sleeves, dove in, and built a company that today now has closing on around 900 people around the world, supporting clients in over 50 countries and millions of learners, using our platform to support what was done traditionally in the classroom, but now done online. So, you know, for us, it's been a big journey, but very excited about what we're doing in terms of building not only great technology, but really having an impact on truly transforming the learning experience, taking it from that digital experience, you know, initially, to really optimizing it, and now actually getting into real transformations to make that experience better for both the people who are providing the learning, but also improving the experience for those that are actually going through the experience itself. And in terms of the company culture, you know, obviously that's a big topic for you as well. But in our case, we've tried to be very purposeful about building a great culture over the years, right from the initial early founding days where, you know, we would interview folks and ask them, you know, big questions like, what are the big barriers that exist to quality learning? And then we would really only hire the people that could answer that question plus the follow-up one, which was, now, how do we solve that problem? So really building a mission-driven organization, very focused on a big problem, a series of them, in fact, and really trying to do everything we can to make sure that whether you're an individual contributor in the company or a people leader, you are developing your leadership capabilities. And I think that's a big hallmark for D2L in terms of the culture that we're building out, is that personal empowerment, that collaboration, that teamwork, that drive around the mission. All of these things are well embedded in the organizational culture.
Clearly, and what a noble purpose to kind of reshape and develop learning. And we all know how challenging that is today. So, who could have imagined the circumstances that we're now in? And I'm sure that's having providing great opportunity for you, but also a great challenge as well. As well. Now I know culture, and I've known you for a while. John has been at the forefront and at the center of how you built the business. But if I take you all the way back to those years in in your third year, fourth year, and graduating shortly thereafter at university when you were a really young entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Was culture something you really thought about at that point as well, or did it really evolve as the company grew?
Uh, it was really important right from those early founding days. I believe that if we could build a company of folks that really care deeply about what we're trying to accomplish as a company, then we could overcome all the different obstacles get thrown in front of us. And so, as you can imagine, even as a young entrepreneur, it was really important about building a great product and getting that product out into the hands of our customers. But behind the scenes, we were working with these individuals in the company, like me, sitting down there as as the founder. But I'm sitting there with my colleagues for in those early days, 7 days a week, sometimes 20 hours a day, and we're working around the clock, often just solving all these big challenges that got thrown at us as a company. So culture mattered a lot in terms of being able to count on the people around you, being able to support each other, create a safe environment, distribute that leadership, carry the weight when someone's not doing well, being able to pick up the ball and run with it for them. That was something that was really important for us as we built out those early days of the company.
So let's talk about maybe the current days.
Sure.
As the CEO, what's your role in the culture today? And has your role in terms of how you shape, interface, lead the culture, has that changed much since those early days?
I think culture starts at the top, but it's not dependent on the top. So if you're as a CEO, along with all the leadership team, you're trying to be as intentional and reward things that you see that are good examples of culture being done right. But at the same time, I'm a big fan of seeing ideas and leadership from within the organization bubble up and help set the tone. So it's not that all of the ideas or all the culture setting gets set at the top, but I think it's still a critical element that you as a CEO lead by example. So we've taken that very literally, right? Like everyone has the same, uh, comp package structure. Everyone has the same, benefits program. Everyone's in the same boat within the organization, no matter who you are. And so having that consistency and leading by example, I think does start at the top. It's really hard to get everyone else to buy in without you leading through that pathway.
No, I bet. What what does high performance look like today at D2L?
Well, there's high performance in terms of your ability to be a people leader. So in terms of moving up, and we've got lots of great examples of people coming into fairly junior roles and skyrocketing up into senior leadership roles all across the organization. And I'm really proud of that being exemplified, if you will. But there's also we subscribe to like a dual ladder structure where you don't have to go down the people leadership track to as an outcome of your performance. You can be the best in the world at whatever your craft is. So as you can imagine, if you want to be the best software developer in the world or the best database guru in the world, we want you to be that. And so if you want to demonstrate leadership and performance in a craft, that's celebrated as well. And so we actually reward performance based upon those roles, and we've created this structure where you can climb up the people track, and it's equivalent and in the technical leadership track as well too.
Got it. Got it. Now I know, and you mentioned that D2L describes itself as a mission-driven organization. How's that influence your culture and help you drive performance and also attract and retain top talent?
It's so key. I remember right in the early days, I got a letter from a parent talking about how our software changed their family's life. Previous to D2L, they were sending their kid from this remote community in Northern Ontario, 600 miles to the closest school to finish her education. And now she was able to stay home with her family in her community and finish her high school and then go off and get a college experience. And that was not possible before us. And it's letters like that that inspire the culture, that get our team excited. It's not the millions of users, it's the individual stories that help cement the kind of impact that we're having. And I think, for me, it was also a realization that this crazy idea of a mission that we had to transform the way the world learns and to reach every learner wasn't just something that was a nice tagline. It was something that really had a big impact on people's lives and became that intersection point of vision and execution, if you will.
Yeah, that's a great story. Um, Innovation is really central to the kind of mission and vision at D2L. And I'm curious to know, as a leader, how do you, I mean, you get asked this question all the time, but how have you fostered a culture of innovation at D2L?
Well, it's not easy. I think there's no secret formula that says here's exactly how you build an innovative company. I think it takes a lot of work and a lot of experimentation. At the heart is a learning culture that's set up to support, a growth mindset within your employees to try different things, experiment, learn, and share back results so you grow. It's not just, the old saying of if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, did it fall? Same thing goes with learning. If you don't share the outcomes, did you actually learn anything?
Right.
So that's a big part of our innovation culture, is that experimentation, the learning. But we also open up time for people to do this. So in our case, we free up about 6 weeks out of the year to do hackathons and inspiration sprints, is what we would call them, or dragon slayers, where you get to take down something that you've always hated or wanted to fix. And so giving people time to work on things that are really personal passions or things that they wanted to get addressed is also another a good example of how we encourage that innovation. And then just speaking about just economics, we spend an incredible amount of money on R&D in a year, and largely because we're still building that future. In our case, we would spend probably 3 or 4 or 5 times what other companies of similar caliber, if you will, of us in R&D to drive those impacts, if you will. So we're investing in that future as well too, and in driving that innovation.
That's terrific. Now, in your Canada's Most Admired Cultures Award submission, a successful one, of course, in 2020, one of the things that really jumped out at us was the very deliberate focus that D2L has on leadership throughout the organization. Love you to talk just a little bit about the 6 leadership competencies and about how these kind of show up, not just in your executive or the leadership group, but really among your team members.
Yeah. So in our case, we define 6 leadership competencies, not just for people leaders, but for the whole company. We've talked about one already in terms of lead by example, deliver awesome outcomes, which speaks to your performance question earlier. Be talent magnets, because as we grow, it's going to be so critical for our leaders throughout all the organization to attract the next generation. Be boundaryless. So how do we foster that collaboration across the organization? It's a relentless learning culture. So, our language is better, faster, smarter. That's one of our competencies. And then, of course, win hearts and minds, not just of our people, but of our clients, of all the other different stakeholders that engage with us. To me, it's about establishing those as certainly leadership competencies that our people leaders embrace, but also for individual contributors across the company. That makes a big difference. Now, we embrace that with recognizing people with awards, showcasing exemplar work when we do leadership events with our people. We're inviting external leaders to talk to some of these issues. It gets reinforced through multiple different mechanisms throughout the organization, including hundreds of what we call bravos or ovations that we have people send to each other throughout the course of a quarter, just sharing achievements and recognizing each other as peers. All of these things really go to contribute to the reinforcing of those leadership competencies.
Yeah, very good. Now, how do you, as and your colleagues who are leaders, how do you identify and support future leaders in the
Yeah,
DTL?
that's a great question. I spend a lot of time doing this, and I know my other leaders across the organization do as well. So in our case, we've built a multiple different ways. We've built it formal mentorship programs. So we spot really high performing talent through, everyone does merit reviews. For example, would imagine in most of your companies that you talk to, but we use that to identify the high potential talent, and then we try to put them into leadership development programs. So even if they're an individual contributor, we have a program called Lead, which brings together a couple dozen of our top potential leaders in the future, and gets them working on really innovative projects to help us continue to grow them, and help us to figure out who's really rising to the occasion.
Very cool. Learning and development clearly is at the core.
Yeah.
It's the purpose of what you do. But what does that look like internally? How do you encourage a learning culture amongst your own team members?
Well, clearly, as a company that's built a learning platform, we use it, and so in our case, we call it Grow at D2L. We've got all kinds of different, internal things. We have a moose mascot, for example, and we have the Making of the Moose, which is our onboarding program.
Mhm.
And we really do a lot of work internally to develop internal programs. We also bring in external folks to help with specific areas. So last year we spent a lot of time, for example, on communication and creating a safe work environment, just making sure that we as leaders are really clear in terms of how we communicate intent and have the conversations with our people, and really make sure that we're creating an environment that's world class. And that these things are things that have contributed to us seeing our retention of our employees really have a big impact. Seeing our engagement survey results, even since we got together, Marty, go up even again with the most recent survey results that we've done.
Fantastic.
And in the middle of a pandemic, which is not easy to do, right? And then next month we're actually rolling out a program, and we're calling D2L Wave. And in that particular case, we're giving everyone about a $2,000 a year educational benefit, where they can go use externally offered programs through groups like the University of Waterloo or Manitoba or Athabasca University, take online courses in high demand skill areas that are aligned to both their professional development, but also with the areas that we want to grow as a company. So we're just making it really easy. They just literally click a button, register, and off they go and take those programs. And we're hopeful that we'll take that out to a broader market with other companies all over Canada embracing it. But it's exciting for us to see that growth mindset, that learning culture being cemented within the organization itself.
So, starting with you, I know that DTL is very involved in the communities that it operates, but talk about why getting involved and giving back is central to the culture at DTL.
Well, our people care. And it's not just me. I care deeply about our communities in which we work and live, and not just, by the way, in Canada, all over the world in terms of where we're operating, and then in other jurisdictions. So, in our case, we have really a few key pillars to our strategy in terms of helping our people get engaged. So the first one is we give people about 1% of their time off paid for volunteer time. So that works out to about 2 days a week. No, sorry, not a week. 2 days a year
Right.
of volunteer time that they can go spend on causes that matter greatly to them. And we leave it up to them to make those decisions in terms of either getting together as a team to volunteer in an organization, or as an individual picking just a cause that they care deeply about. The other thing is we also try to find good partners that exemplify what we're trying to accomplish as a company. So, Girls 20 is a good example that's spun under the G20, where we are working with young women that want to become leaders, and we're doing everything we can to help foster their growth and their potential. We've worked in locations like Haiti or Kenya or other different geographic locations all over the world to help foster teacher education. So helping educators get better at what they're doing so that they can, obviously have a big impact on hundreds of thousands of people's lives. And then we've also helped clients. So in our case, contributing to efforts in refugee camps, or with lifting women out of poverty in Brazil, or helping female entrepreneurs in Libya. These are all big efforts that our teams sort of rolled up their sleeves and and jumped into. And then, and then obviously, what's great about it in building a company is you also have an opportunity to give back through sponsorship of events in our communities. And so whether that's food banks or, the groups like the National Ballet School, clearly, or other organizations where we can support, those are all great areas. But frankly, we also try to be smart about it. So we don't just give money. We also spend a lot of time thinking about, well, how do we help these organizations go through digital transformations or to support the next step of their evolution as an organization? And that's where we can help them get big grants or to support their evolution as an organization themselves. So, trying to apply our area of expertise to having an impact. And then personally, I've been involved with dozens of different tech entrepreneurs to help them really navigate the waters of building great companies too.
I know you have, because I know some of those people, and I think that's incredible because it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and really not expected of someone who's doing something much different. So kudos to you, John, for that personally. Um, I can only imagine how D2L has been navigating as a result of the changes brought on by COVID-19, pandemic. But talk about that a little bit. Talk about how you've navigated, how you've kind of made your way through this, and what possibly even some of the positives coming out of this are.
Yeah, well, it's everyone's had to navigate it, and in our case, in January, February timeframe, we saw an early indication that there was a big challenge on the horizon, and so we started to prepare fairly early, probably relative to most. We had clients literally call us up and say, "We need to put 4,000 courses online, next week," and this was back in January, February timeframe in Australia region, and as we dug in, we got to understand COVID-19. And in our case, what we try to do is do everything we could to support our clients going through that transition. So the first thing we said, and I know it's going to sound counterintuitive to that first statement, which is we said, employees, put your oxygen masks on first. We need you to be able to be in a good spot to be able to support the bigger mission. So if you're not in a good spot, take the time off, take an extra day or two. If you need to take care of your kids or your parents or someone else in your community, go do that. And then come tell us. And so that we can make those accommodations for you, as if you will, to adapt to this new reality that we found ourselves in. And then from there, we dug in. We made sure that we had the capacity. We put in the investments to support onboarding of all of these clients all over the world. We saw obviously a large spike in utilization of online learning. And as literally every client said, we got to flip overnight. And so we just had to be ready to accommodate that. And the teams put in literally heroic work, working side by side with clients to go through that transformation. And then personally, I actually, not only did we do that and help set up a whole bunch of policy briefs to help governments all over the world figure out how to navigate these things, or other companies, dove into the Industry Strategy Council within Canada to help map the recovery efforts through the ISID ministry, if you will, informing the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Finance and you name it, in terms of how to restart, recover, and reimagine the economy. And that report actually just came out in December, even though it was an effort that got kicked off in June to help navigate these waters on a big macro perspective, if you will. So it's a culmination of a heck of a lot of work and changing our model from weekly meetings in many cases down to daily stand-ups, and we've kept that daily stand-up going for leadership team just to make decisions faster. We saw our net promoter score for our clients climb to an all-time high of like 45.5, which is pretty exceptional when you think about it. It's just and exemplifies our culture too, by the way, because we didn't say 46, we said 45.5, and which I laugh about. But we're also seeing great employee engagement survey results coming back, and you're nervous about this, right? Because you're leaning in to the storm. You're not quite sure what the results are going to be. But in my opinion, these tough times are what really exemplify your values and your culture and your people. And it's not the easy times that allow you to see what you're capable of. It's the tough times. And I'm really proud of how people stepped up, and frankly, also how our clients stepped up during this really challenging time frame.
Yeah. Well, let's just stay on that topic for one more
Sure.
minute if you could. And I'm curious to know what, in your view, what this pandemic has taught you about the D2L culture and the importance just generally of culture in an organization.
What hasn't it taught us? It's incredibly important to have great people around you during a challenging time. So that investment that you make in terms of building a great team and culture, hiring the right folks, making sure they're engaged, it really matters when you're dealing with these types of scenarios, because your that culture really shows up and helps you solve all the problems that you're facing as you go through these challenges. And none of our growth, and none of the, in our case, we've hired more than 300 people, including co-ops in the last year. None of that would have been possible without that culture, without those people, without teams really digging in during very challenging times. And I think we've sustained all of this over many, many months because of the mission-driven nature of the organization. So, you won't find a D2Ler that doesn't know our mission. It's, many people struggle with it being like some words on a plaque somewhere, but everyone's taking it to heart here. And, in our case, we've had, some of our projects this year in terms of our leadership development program that we had with this lead program for individual contributors, for example, was how do I fix the math problems that are showing up in schools? So with all the kids trying to learn from home, there's a lot of learning loss happening for some students that were struggling, especially lower economic uh, and middle economic students, if you will. And so how do we actually give them a different set of resources that help get them back on the right track? And how do we change the whole model? And
Yeah.
so they came up with solutions. So to me, your culture is so important, not just in the good days, but also to really help you navigate the really tough times. And that's, I think most people forget that. It's not about just, building a culture so you can outperform. It's building a culture so you can survive and navigate and outperform during tough times.
John, I would argue it's more important in a difficult time.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
we sometimes mess our culture up when we're super successful and get a little loose with it, right? And so I think what you've said is absolutely, dead on, spot on. And I'm curious also to know that if there was one lesson that you learned as a young entrepreneur that you still value today, what would that be?
Uh, well, I think it's the conversation that we're having today, which is people matter. And right from the very beginnings of D2L, we knew that getting the right folks into the organization, getting them aligned to the mission, helping them build the culture. We use a story around bonfires, by the way. Like as you grow as a company, if you can imagine it as an organization being like a bonfire, everyone's crowded around it, and the leader's in the middle. That's the fire. But as the organization grows, just like as the crowd around a bonfire grows, it gets colder at the back. And so, in our ideal scenario, even when we're a really tiny company, we said, well, we got to light a whole bunch of fires. And so, to me, it's all about the people, and it's all about fostering that next generation of leadership that's going to help you truly scale. And if you don't have that great team, I don't know how you do it. You're not going to be able to do it yourself. So if I go back to the days when I was a young entrepreneur, that I would really underscore the how important it was to get the right folks on board. And I was very lucky that we did get the right folks on board in the early days.
Let's flip that upside down a little bit and ask you, what's the one thing you know today that you wish you'd known at the beginning of your journey?
I That's a good question. I think I'd have to say that everything along the journey has helped me learn. So even the tough stuff that we've gone through, and we've been through lots of tough things,
Yeah.
has made us stronger as a company, and has helped us get over some of these big challenges, and have helped us, get to the point where we are today. So I know you go through lots of these tough challenges and people wish them away. And there's probably a few, not gonna lie, that I wish there was probably something that we didn't go through.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, because we did go through them, we're a heck of a lot stronger as a company today than we would have otherwise. So I don't shy away from the problems. I look at them as just obstacles we have to overcome, and they make us stronger as we grow.
Yeah, they sure do. Now, looking ahead, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years, what do you see as critical to aligning your people to your culture and to sustaining this high performance culture at D2L?
Ooh, that's another good that's another good question. To me, it's around well, as we scale, communication becomes even more important because you can't just turn to the person next to you and get the message across right away. You've got to scale through a large group of folks as you grow, and so communication becomes so important in building that alignment. And that goes, bottom up and top down. It doesn't mean just one way. And most people think about communication as I sent the email. That's not that's not what I mean. It's about creating a dialogue and a conversation within your organization and making sure that things are well aligned, that we're all heading in the same direction. We've all aligned, if you will. Um, that also demands focus. So instead of trying to do a million new things, it's really around making sure that the things that you are doing, you're doing exceptionally well. And also, I would argue staying true to the mission. So in our case, I'm not bored of our mission. It's been 20 years of trying to transform the way the world learns. I feel like we're just getting warmed up, and there's so much more to do. And I'm so excited about the capability of our company now at the scale that we're at today to actually go off and solve many of these problems. And so, to me, if I think about that, it's really staying true, staying focused, getting that alignment, building that. These are not. I'm not giving you any rocket science here, but to me, it's if we do that, then it keeps that family feel as we continue to grow, and our clients will feel like they're part of the family. Our new people that we're hiring are going to feel like they're part of the family, and that culture it continues to get better year over year, not strained, because we're all engaged. We're all actively trying to make it better with every interaction that we have with folks, and we're trying to grow as people, right?
Sounds like you just have to light more bonfires, John.
And light a lot of fires. Yeah, exactly.
I love that. I love that analogy. My last question is, you look, you were an entrepreneur before you were a graduate.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, and that in itself is amazing. So, what if there's one piece of advice you would share with a young leader today who's starting out on their high performance culture journey, whether they be an entrepreneur or a professional manager or in the public sector, whatever they may choose to do? What is the one piece of advice that you would want them to know?
That's a great question. There's probably a couple pieces. I think the one would be purposeful. Um, it's a long journey. So the clearer that you are in terms of what you're trying to accomplish, the easier it is for you to attract the right folks, to get people to believe in what you're trying to accomplish, and to have sustainability. If you're solving really important problems that are going to have a really big impact, that's going to be a lightning rod to get you the right folks to come into the organization. And so being very purposeful is important. And then the other thing I would point out is, we as a country and as a world are going through probably the biggest transformation that we'll ever see in terms of our economy. So if you're not working on something in the digital space right now, in terms of either helping traditional industries digitize or digital in general, you're missing out on a pretty big opportunity. I think as I look at the data, about half the world economy is going to digitize over the next 3 to 4 years. And so, what we think of as, pretty transformational today in terms of online learning, which is less than 5% adopted globally, that's literally going to go to 50+% almost overnight. And that's not just learning. It's going to be healthcare, government, agriculture, oil and gas. All the traditional sectors are going to go through this big transformation, whether it's technology or transformations in other ways. There's a mountain of opportunity out there to work on really meaningful work that's going to help create global leading companies. And I hope you're purposeful about what you do to get there.
No, what great advice and guidance. And so many things came up today that that I think are so valuable to leaders and organizations today or tomorrow. None greater than purpose, what you shared with us today, but looking at the importance of people and how they matter, and developing leaders, having competencies, not just for those leaders, but for the folks who might aspire to be leaders or lead others, and by example, per se. But as you now take what has been a Canadian-based business around the world, I think that concept of lighting more fires is a great one, because that conjures up, at least for me, not only as you talked about, people furthest away are cooler, they need more, you need another fire, but it also means that there's passion behind it, because normally we're sitting around a bonfire, something good is happening, usually, at least for most of our memories in this part of the world. So there's a lot to learn from the detail example, and possibly even more from you, John Baker. And we're just blessed to have you with us today. And as a Canada's Most Admired Corporate Culture two-time winner at D2L. So thank you for investing this time with us today.
Marty, it's a real pleasure. And again, kudos to you and your team for encouraging us to always strengthen our cultures and our organizations. I know it's not easy, the work that you're doing to go through all of these results and to help foster this award. But it's so important, because quite often we go through life without recognizing all the achievements, and you give us an opportunity to recognize some of the amazing achievements that have occurred. So thank you for doing that. Makes a big difference.
It's our pleasure on behalf of the team. Thank you for saying that. For us, it's inspiring high performance cultures, whether we're involved directly with those organizations, or that the sharing of others that do great work like yours through a medium like this inspires one person or an organization to want to get better at it. We think it really is at the center of competitive advantage, and you've proven that. And we thank you for sharing your stories today.
Thanks, Barney.
Join us next week for another episode of Building High Performance Cultures. And in the meantime, if you want to learn more about the topic, please visit waterstonehc.com.